Randomness has nothing to do with arbitrariness. Arbitrary is something
What does it mean to pick something at a whim?
For example, the way genders were formed. That's just the way that they happen to develop. There's no reason really other than our preconceptions and what we develop to be our opinions on the two sexes and all this shit. But
so
that is not
wrong.
random.
How goes the wholesome Minecraft stream? Oh yeah, very wholesome stream. Sondsol and VGG now being angry. Hans and Sondsol are using Vosh's neo-pronoun argument and twisting it in true scum shit. No, I'm not! Literally, no, I'm not. I want to talk to fucking Somniostatic. I hear Vosh is talking to Aiko later today in regards to the crazy shit Hans and Sondsol are saying. I love how Sondsol tries to explain all this stuff. It's not even that people like Hans and Sondsol and Lycan and all the other darn fucks are malicious or calculated. They are sad, dysfunctional people. Ironic. They are sad, dysfunctional people. Where is that? And it bleeds into everything they do as they pretend to act like they know how to be somewhat professional. What? It's like watching high school kids try to get popular. So not only is it not worth engaging with, but it's not even worth knowing about. Unless something happens where they directly interact with us first. It's a complete waste of time, and they'll most likely stay C-list because hey, listen. C-list? C-list? I got A+ tier on the Twitch politics tier list. Suck my dick. Is this projection or just brain rot? It's brain rot. I want to talk to Somniostatic.
Hello?
Hello. How's it going?
Hey, give me 1 second. Let me turn you up.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, that should be good.
Alrighty. Alright, so
I just left a very long message in your Twitch because I think it makes a salient point. I'm sure that came off as very aggressive and probably made you angry or whatever, which I would kind of, I guess, assume it would.
Can I explain why it makes me angry?
Sure.
So I kind of said it in the first message, I think, but I keep on getting people telling me I'm wrong, but then just like saying you're wrong, you're a transphobe, and then dipping when I don't think that my arguments contradict anyone else's like all that much, besides saying that we should have better arguments than what we have.
Sure. And I guess in fairness, the couple convos I've seen have either derailed so quickly or been so abstract that I could see how no one maybe possibly has made an argument to you.
It always boils down almost verbatim to, well, we should just be chill with people. And it's like, okay, I'm fine with being chill with people, but there are other people that aren't, and that's what I want to try and like work past, right?
Sure. Okay, so I guess let's start here. Do you know the history of the True Scum and Transmed movement online? Like the arguments they've used?
I know all about True Scum. I know all about Transmed.
Okay, so the reason that they were so harmful is because they said more or less that you have to either justify your identity or your transness or whatever, or it's not a part of your biological identity, so it's not valid. If you can't prove it if you basically kind of like what you're asking for, if you can't prove it with a logical argument, then it's not valid. It's not it's not some concrete thing that I even need to respect.
Sure. I don't agree with that second that second one. The first one, when it comes to like justifying who you are, I think that when we're talking about justifying transness, or I say transness, I feel like that's a really weird way to. I don't know how else to say it. The concept of being trans, yeah.
Yeah.
So when we talk about like justifying someone being trans, or trans people having to justify their existence, to a certain degree, like this is a descriptive claim, not the way that it ought to be, but the way that it is. We kind of do have to make arguments to like justify to people like, hey, look, there's like, it's more arguing against their justifications for oppressing them, right? That's basically what we're doing.
I think that's the wrong lens to look at it at, because what you're essentially saying in effect is you have to be able to prove something. When you say descriptive claim, what a descriptive claim should be is just what happens, not what ought to happen, or what should be expected to happen. So the idea of boiling down someone's gender identity into concrete facts about them is what comes off as so offensive to people, because that's where you get into the transmet argument. When you take that to its logical conclusion, you're telling people that there is some innate trait in you that makes you trans or non-binary, and that's just not the case. Like, the science doesn't back that up. The professionals that study, it doesn't agree with it. So that's my.
Let me ask you this, in specifically on that, right? If gender isn't something that is innate to us, right? Mm-hmm. This is where I like, this is the part that I do disagree with people on. If gender isn't something that is innate to us, then what is it, right? I'm not saying that it has anything to do with any connection to biological sex, right? It is an internal feeling that is specific to each individual, right? Mm-hmm. That they have some inkling of how they would like to express out to the rest of the world, right? How they perceive themselves and how they would like to express, right? Whether it is the gendered like aesthetic, like being big and brawny to be a man, or whether it's the societal expectations that they feel that they would like to uphold or not uphold. So if it, like, let's take a trans man who like transitions from being a woman to being a man, right? They don't want to uphold the gendered expectations of womanhood, right?
Sure, but you just defined it yourself. It's the societal expectations. That's all it is. There is nothing else. That's all it is. So just because these things exist now and we can say, look how developed they are, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just that we have a history of associating these two things with these other things.
But
and
I
even
can
those
even
two
point,
things, it's wrong, because there is no uber male and uber female. There is no end to the poles that anyone really exists at.
But you can describe things right now. If I were to ask you what things are more masculine or more feminine, you could explain some things to me, right?
But that's only because there's societal expectations, and those have switched over time. Those have changed throughout history.
Yes, I agree. And that's something that I keep on saying. I agree that it's a social construct. These things can change. And that's why I'm fine with people saying, like, oh, you know what? Like, we should like expand our conception of gender to include people that are non-binary, or to include people that are that describe themselves as xenogender or anything like that.
Wait. So do you recognize that xenogender, being someone who identifies as xenogender, is the exact same as being non-binary? Those two are the exact same things.
Yeah, but I was just adding, like.
Sure, but I noticed in the convo that you guys had with Leftist Owl that you guys kept making arguments that put some like different type of non-binary out of the normal non-binary, and that's just not based on anything.
Sure, I agree with you on that. In conversations, I don't like being in the same call as Hans while he's doing debates, because I think that he's too aggro too quick.
Well, I will say that if he was the one who messaged me, I would tell him to go fuck himself, because he's kind of on another level for me. I've seen how abusive he's been towards people, and I just don't gel with that. And the only thing I really remember about you is that you did the Trans Lifeline charity like a year ago or something,
Yeah,
and
the
I never
reason I
really
talk about these things is because I genuinely care about these issues, and I genuinely care about expanding trans people's rights and people who.
But you're excluding other trans people by doing so.
Okay,
That's
so
the
this is where I'm
problem.
going to ask you, what part of my argument specifically that do you think is excluding anybody? Because this is where I think that people don't actually listen to my arguments. They hear words that I say and then they assign to me what they think my intentions either are to that or what they think they hear me say and not what I'm actually saying.
Well, okay, so for one, I would say the effects of what you're saying are what a lot of people think you are saying when they tell you those things, even though you may disagree with it. That is the effect it has on the broader discourse. Two, I would say, is that your entire argument is flawed because of the fact that you keep trying to quantify these things.
Wait, there's no quantification at all in any of my arguments at all, right?
Well, didn't you just say that aren't there some inherent traits that are qualified as these different social constructs?
Okay, qualitate and quantitate are two very,
to be
very
specific,
different things.
to try to define in some concrete way. Maybe I misspoke.
Okay, sure. So, yeah, I do think that we should have some, there's two reasons that I think that we should have some kind of concrete definitions. I'm not saying a concrete definition for man or woman because we have a general conception of what a man or a woman is in society, right? But we do,
Sure.
but we do need to have pretty strong definitions of what it means to be trans, what it means to be non-binary, because especially in legal systems, right? This is the part of RGR's argument that I do think is fine, is that I think that the way that she goes about trying to define gender or try to define the quality of being trans. I hate saying transness. It feels wrong.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Well, we're both cis, so we're allowed to be a little bit dumb.
Yeah, but I think that the way that RGR goes about it is to have wording that can be used in a legal way to protect trans people. I think that her way that she qualifies what it means to be trans is inclusive to the point where I can't think of a trans person that wouldn't be included by her definition.
No, absolutely. She literally said.
I don't know if she's changed her position since the first.
No. During that whole thing, she literally said that gender is tied to sex, and she was making trans medicalist arguments.
So the argument that I understand that she made was that our conception of gender traditionally has been tied to sex-based characteristics, but I think that and that is true. That is where gender comes from. But the social construction has changed since then. I think that there's even been a change in the social construction in the past 10 years because there are people that recognize non-binary gender identities, and that's great. I think that's fucking fantastic. But when we're talking about defining these things, if there is no definition that we can put into any legislation that can protect trans people, because we have no definition of what it means to be trans, right? Then we can't legislate protections for them. We can't, because what group of people are we giving these? Whether it is a social spending program that gives money to trans people who are trying to transition, whether it is protections for people that are trans that are trying to find housing, any of these things, we have to have some sort of definition on the books of what it means to be trans, and we should find one that is as inclusive as fucking possible so that these people can get the protections that they need. Right?
Do you understand the fundamental hypocrisy of that argument, though? Because you're saying that you have to be inclusive as possible by as rigidly defining it as possible.
Okay, so let me just
say this real quick. I don't want to interrupt you too much, but that type of thinking goes against the very foundation of trans ideology. Well,
hold on. There's many different there's many different theories about what gender is or how we should define it or anything like that. So saying that it goes against trans ideology That is incorrect. What is correct is if we were to define it super rigidly, then there would be people that are left out of that. But there are ways that we can define what it means to be trans in a way that includes as many people as possible while excluding the least amount of people as possible.
Why would you have to exclude anyone, though?
Because there's
like, I feel like, so I feel like you think that if we don't make these structures that protect very specifically a large amount of trans people, then it's okay to exclude a small amount of them because you're doing so much good and you're protecting the larger group. But I would encourage you to look back at what happened after the Stonewall riots in the 70s when gay people made those exact arguments against trans people.
But I don't know what group would be excluded by defining. Fuck.
So, so how would you define it? How would you define transness right now?
Fuck, off the dome, I don't know if I could do it off the dome without excluding some group of people, which is why I was going to ask chat if someone in chat could find for me super fucking quick what RGR's definition of...
I don't want RGR's definition. I want a real person's definition.
Well, hold on.
I want she is not a scholar.
Really quick, I'm just going to like pull out the RGR definition. But I know that there are people in chat that want to jump in on this.
I think a lot of the problem too is you and Hans. It seems like you took a lot from her point of view, and she has a very destructive point of view towards the larger trans community.
I think that there are some parts of her argument that are not good, right? And there are some parts of it that are good. Right?
I mean, I think it's her entire argument that just sort of boils to the top at a certain point.
I super disagree because, okay, so if I was going to try and do this, all right, let me like pull out a notepad super quick so I can make sure that I'm like adequately.
What do you mean, or just off the top of your head? I'm not trying to debate.
Like I know. Like I just want to make sure that I'm doing this correctly, right? So like if I was going to define what it means to be trans, someone that does not fit into the gender that they were assigned at birth, whether or not they have undergone any kind of gender affirmation surgery, any kind of sexual reassignment surgery, or have had any kind of legal documentation that is, well, we should make it easier for people that are trans to change their legal documentation. So I would, I wouldn't add that in there because if you're trans and you want to have these protections, you should be able to easily change your gender identity on any of these forms, right? So like I would explain it in a way that could, I would define it in a way that included all non-out of the closet trans people, people who haven't been able to either A, afford, or B, for any kind of physiological reasons, not undergone any kind of HRT or surgeries, right?
So what you're saying is that it boils down to self-identity. It boils down to
at the social level, yes, but there would have to be some kind of way for us to
tell. Like how do
like
you tell?
Like that's why I said that's why I made the qualifier of like the legal documentation. You would probably have to have some sort of like legal documentation that you're trans. And I know that there are like issues that can arise out of that, but I think that we can push down those negative outcomes, right?
Well, but it's not so much about being. It's not so much. Okay, so I'm speaking as a cishet here, but I've talked to an inordinate amount of the trans community, and I don't think it's so much about ticking a box so you can tell people you're trans or be recognized as trans. It's ticking the box of the gender that you identify as, period. So when you put it in this prism of male versus female or man versus woman, there are people who move along that, but that's what the whole idea of non-binary means. It's just outside of it. It's outside of the binary or the bimodal spectrum. So the idea that unless we had some sort of crazy brain scans that could read everyone's neurons, how would you ever know? Like, how would you ever know that someone was non-binary or trans? There's no way to know.
Like, there's no way for us to know whether someone's like gay or lesbian either. But we have those protections for them, and we have legal definitions of what it means to be gay or lesbian or anything like that, so that people can't discriminate against those people.
So, see, this is where the argument, I feel like, loses the common thread, I guess I could say, because
And then what
I
do
don't
you do?
understand
Shut
why
the fuck up.
you have to go about it that way. Like, it's
Because
just very
I want
odd
as
to me.
many trans people as physically possible to have the rights that they should already have, right?
But how does advocating for it in that way even accomplish that?
Because I can point to things that I want to do, right? And I can, one second, the music that I have playing in the background just turned into heavy metal. Let me fucking change it. Why do I have to do it like this? Well, because like I can't think of another way that we could have legal protections for trans people without having legal protections for trans people. Like what it seems to be, the argument that seems to keep coming back at me, whether it's from Aiko or whether it is from Vosh. I didn't listen to the whole conversation, but it seems like what Vosh was saying there is like ultimately like we should just be chill. With people,
it's
right?
not about being chill. It's
But,
about
like,
being respectful. That's not the same as being
well,
chill.
I'm sorry. Like, yes, we should be respectful, right? But that doesn't afford legal protections. Just in the same way of being like respectful to African American people in the United States isn't going to get them any more representation either in the halls of Congress or in like in terms of like passing legislation that helps them in the legal system, the criminal justice system. Just being respectful of their like identity isn't going to do that. We have to have actual legislation that protects people, right? And that's why, like, I'm sure, like, every single time you or anyone in Demon Mama's community, every time there's a legislation that is drafted against trans people, you guys like get super upset, as you should, right? But when it comes to like putting forward arguments so that there are legal protections for trans people, well, now it's a problem because like there might be someone in some way, shape, or form that is excluded from this. But I don't think that that's necessarily the case, and also I don't think that it's like any amount of like trans people that are excluded from this, which I don't know what group would be, right?
Well, xenogenders, xenogenders, neopronouns, the more fringe of it would be excluded by that. Anything
what part
that's
of my
based on
definition earlier, right?
So basically, anyone under your definition that self-identifies and that's all the proof that they have is excluded.
That's all I've said that they need.
But how do you prove that?
You don't. Again,
You
we
can't
don't have
prove it.
How do I prove
so
that?
then
How do I prove to anyone that I'm bi?
No, I understand.
Or how do I prove? Or like, if someone was going to get kicked out of their apartment because their landlord hates gay people, right? And they're gay. How would you prove that? Well, you would just like there would be enough evidence either in the way that you live or in like your interpersonal relationships or anything like that, right? That you could bring to a court that could offer you protections based off of the definitions of what we have and the protections that we have for these individuals.
And what do you do?
But wait a second.
Fuck up.
But that's not how you would prove that, though. You would prove that.
Yeah, it would absolutely.
No.
Fuck someone in the ass in the fucking court, right?
You wouldn't prove it by focusing on the person who's being discriminated against and proving that they're worthy of discrimination. You would prove it by focusing on the landlord and finding evidence that he is out for this person because they're gay, like messages or social media posts and shit. That's the fundamental difference, I think, between
these things
like
are
you're focusing on the people. Sure.
Yeah, no, you're focusing on one half of it, but the other half of it is like if someone was to come forward and say like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to be discriminating this, or like I'm going to kick this person out because like I, for whatever reason, bullshit reason, right? Someone else says they're kicking me out because I'm gay, right? Well, number one, like yeah, if we didn't have protections for gay people, right, and it was legal for someone to get kicked out,
which it was not too long ago.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Then they would prove that they're gay by saying, oh, they have a boyfriend or something like that.
I mean, I guess, yeah. I think that they would usually, in my experience at least, they usually go after the person who's discriminating and try to prove that they are or not. But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but...
So why is me trying to advocate for a way for us to define transness in a way that is...
Well, I can give you a very salient example that was not too far off. In the debate with Leftist Owl, he was literally explaining to you the consensus of science on transness and non-binariness, and you guys called him transphobic somehow.
I called him transphobic because he was saying that gender is completely arbitrary. Which
wait. Hold on. Wait.
Go ahead.
You guys don't understand the definition of the word arbitrary. I did notice that.
Okay, arbitrary, we can look up a definition for it right now.
I can explain it to you in about 5 seconds. It's lines drawn in the sand that you just picked at a whim, but that whim is not the same as it being random. Randomness has nothing to do with arbitrariness. Arbitrary is something
What does it mean to pick something at a whim?
For example, the way genders were formed. That's just the way that they happen to develop. There's no reason really other than our preconceptions and what we develop to be our opinions on the two sexes and all this shit. But
so
that is not wrong. Random.
No, but that's like incorrect. It's not random. And I agree with what you're like the ends.
But I just defined arbitrary to you.
Okay, so really quick, I agree with the end of that statement, but it's not arbitrary because there are like specific things that we can point towards that are more feminine or more masculine, or what is a woman or what isn't a woman. No. Not in any way that is perfect, but generally speaking, right?
You just said feminine and masculine, and you referred to, I'm guessing, different levels of hormones in your body. Correct?
No.
Well, then how would you tell what's more feminine or masculine?
So, for example, I wear like t-shirts and fucking jeans, and I fucking never wear a fucking dress. I don't do anything that's feminine. I generally speaking am more assertive.
You don't do anything that lends to your conception. You do things that lend to your conception of masculine.
Because
you just explained how it's arbitrary.
But that's not arbitrary because
that is what arbitrary means.
That's not what arbitrary means.
I know you and Hans don't think so, but it is. Like, I'm trying to think of a better way to put this into words. Like,
okay, what I would say is it's not arbitrary, but it is something that can change over time, right?
Sure. But what are they based on? What do you think masculine and feminine are based on?
Traditionally, they are based off of sex-based, like secondary sex characteristics, generally speaking, right? On top of that, the societal expectations that we put on the different sexes in society.
And what are those based on?
The ability for people to be able to do certain things, like in history, and again, like these things have changed over time, right? But just because it has changed over time doesn't mean that it's arbitrary, because if it was arbitrary, then we wouldn't be able to pick these things out at a whim, right?
No, that's not what arbitrary means either. But when I say draw, okay, so imagine you're on a beach, right?
Okay.
You take a stick, you just draw 3 random ass lines. They're not random truly because you picked them. Or, you pick them because you picked the best 3 spots that look the best to you. That's the same as arbitrary. So when you do those...
What would be arbitrary? Or like to use your example, it would be like if everyone was like, okay, yeah, when you go to the beach and you want to draw lines in the sand, you should have them, if you want them to be, you should either draw them horizontal or vertical, right? And then you walk in and you draw like one vertical line, one horizontal line, and then another horizontal or another vertical line, right? Now, was it arbitrary? No, because you picked based off of what everybody else is like saying, but everybody like has an understanding of the vertical and the horizontal lines. But if you came in there and you drew with like a diagonal line, right? Now you're going outside of the 2 binary things, and that's fine.
That's a good metaphor. Now imagine the person that told you to draw the lines that way. That decision he made is the truly arbitrary decision which starts people drawing lines. That is a pretty good allegory for gender as a social construct.
Yeah, because more people start recognizing this new diagonal line.
No, because more people. Well, no, it's not a new diagonal line. That's for damn sure. But more people
sure,
recognize.
but like in the context of like what people recognize now.
Sure, and yeah, normalization, whatever. But people, it's not that people recognize that, oh, there's this new line. It's that people recognize that who the fuck told us to draw the lines this way? It doesn't really make sense to us anymore.
Well, sure, but you're like arguing for the idea of gender abolition, right? But we have gender in society right now. And if you want to get rid of gender, then that's fine. And you can move us towards that way. But to say that it's all arbitrary is just like incorrect. And that's one of the problems that I have with this. Because when you say gender is arbitrary, or that you say that it's like, and because it's arbitrary, all gender is just like something that you can choose. That is the thing that I said was transphobic.
Arbitrary has nothing to do with choice.
Oh, okay. I don't necessarily, in the context of this, when we're saying it's arbitrary and therefore you can like choose different parts of masculinity or femininity, right? Then
that's not what arbitrary means. Like, so you keep conflating arbitrary with you can choose wherever you want, or arbitrary with randomness, or arbitrary of this or that. What arbitrary means is that it's not really based on any real, like, scientifically quantifiable thing. It's just kind of something that happened the way that it did, and you can give all kinds of causes for these things.
But that's a social construct.
That's not the same as being random.
I know.
So I feel like you think that if people realize that gender roles are arbitrary, it hurts the trans movement because
that's not my problem. It's not that. It's that when we say that like all gender is completely arbitrary and therefore like gender means literally nothing, when we can look at the world and we can see people like just like if we look at like your average everyday person, we can show them a series of pictures of people and they can like nearly 100% of the time recognize a man or a woman. So like
we
obviously
live in the society that we've created. Yeah.
Yes, of course. And that's what I keep on saying, right? We live in a society that we all recognize these like same basic things that can like lead to either identifying someone as either a woman or a man, right? Or now like something in between that's non-binary, right? And if we want to
wait, hold on. Not in between.
Sure. Like non-binary doesn't necessarily have to be in between, but
it
like
has
that's like
nothing to do with that.
Like
in
that's
between.
Outside of the conversation that we're having. Yeah, I understand. So like when we talk about it being arbitrary, sure, it might be arbitrary, but that's not what the like. Just because it's like arbitrary on how it like came about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that it's arbitrary in the way that we use it now. And just because it's not arbitrary in the way that we have it now doesn't mean that we can't move it to the way that people want it to be in the future, right? I'm not saying that it ought to be the way that it is now, right? We can move it, and I don't really care one way or another if we like explode gender and get rid of all gender. I don't really have an attachment to my gender like as a man in any like meaningful way, right? Outside of like just like presenting masculine, I like it just like really doesn't matter to me. So if we got rid of gender tomorrow, it really wouldn't fucking hurt my feelings, right? That's not what I care about. Mm-hmm. What I care about is when we start like going from that line of saying, okay, yeah, no, gender was like originally like this social construct that was based off of sex-based characteristics, and now we start recognizing it as being something that's more aesthetic and like social pressures, right? To then say that like gender is like can be a choice or something like that, when like the current like societal conception of what gender is a like an internal feeling that we have, right? It is an internal feeling. We like if you took a trans woman and then you like forced her to present as a man, that would cause like a discomfort there, whether or not they have gender dysphoria or not. Like there's some amount of like incongruity there, right? In the same way that like I have also felt like an incongruity with the way that I
like hyper masculine kind of dumb shit.
Yeah. So like that being the case, right? When people say that it is a choice, that's why I say it's transphobic to say that gender is
that is a very damaging statement.
But I can explain why. Because when we start talking about like gender is a choice, right? Well, that's literally the argument that conservatives have been saying. Like, oh yeah, gender is like these people are choosing to be trans, right?
No, see, I think that's where you and Hans both lost the plot on that one, and I don't really fault you that much for it, because it was just kind of a whole circus of people yelling at each other and shit. But what it means to say that gender is a choice is that for some people, okay, so do you believe that trans people don't necessarily have to have dysphoria to be trans?
Yeah,
correct?
No, there's a high correlation, but it's not a precondition. It's not a necessary component to being trans.
So if you are trans but you don't have gender dysphoria, you are choosing how to identify based on an inner feeling. The thing is, though...
Hold on. I'm going to stop you right there. I'm only stopping us when I feel like... yeah, but like I don't think that is a choice. I don't feel like you choose your gender in your head. You might choose how you present to the world, right? But that's
that is your gender. Your gender is how you present to the world. Like, what if there are some subset of people that don't experience these things and still don't identify I think the most boiled down definition you can get of being trans or non-binary is that you don't, like you said earlier, you don't identify with the gender that you were raised in or born into. And there are people that make a choice not to identify with that anymore. There is some subset of people. I think it's very irresponsible, and I think it's very damaging to say that is transphobic, because what you're doing is you're dog whistling to trans medicalists and true scums. You're either intentionally or unintentionally.
But I don't think that someone who chooses to express themselves based off of their internal feelings is.
But there are people that also just choose to do it. Like the conflation of that and you can't choose to be trans is a very disgusting dog whistle.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this. There are people that are xenogender, right? And they use words, whether like, I'm going to try and not use like anything that someone actually identifies as like that is part of this discourse. So I'm just going to say table gender, all right? Because there's a table in front of me.
Now you're doing the attack helicopter.
No, I'm not, because I could choose dream gender. Is that one better? Like I was trying to choose one that wasn't dear gender. Yeah, I was trying to choose one that wasn't dear gender. Okay, so like let's take dream gender, right? They're using a word to describe their gender to people as a metaphor, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what is that metaphor referring to?
It refers to their aesthetic interpretation and personal interpretation of the societal expectations that they place on themselves.
Okay, so what is a societal expectation that you can place on yourself? That seems to be contradictory.
That's what men and women do all the time.
No, but like the societal expectation is not self-imposed.
It can be.
Well, it's imposed by society.
You can also liberate yourself by choosing to exist outside of that and creating your own sense of self in a societal sense. So like,
well, that would simply be not caving into the societal pressure. That wouldn't be imposing a societal or a societal pressure on yourself.
Well, I was more talking in terms of like men who get super into being men. They're imposing that on themselves in a sense.
Well, I would disagree. I think that people that like have such
they're
like
victims too.
Yeah, but I think that that's imposed on them by society. I don't think that they're imposing that on. Well, I mean, like we could boil it down to like they're not choosing to like buck the societal expectations, right? So like in that way, it's a choice. But like I think that because it is societal pressure to present in a certain way, that is not and it's not a choice that they're making of their own free will, right?
Well, like internally, I understand what you're saying, but you can't. I guess the whole thing it really comes down to is the whole self-identity argument, self-ID. Like you can't prove the inner workings of someone else's mind. So why would you ever assume that there is some way to prove something like that.
Okay, hold on.
Just because there are easy cases to prove doesn't mean that there are.
Listen, I want to stick. We're moving it. We're moving the conversation, and I don't want to move the conversation past this really quick. Okay, I don't understand what you mean when you say a societal expectation that one imposes on themselves that isn't imposed by society, right? Because that's like pretty central to the argument that you're making for xenogenders.
Let me be more clear then. What I mean is that people who usually grow up in a toxic environment like super masculine or super feminine or something, sure, they can take those expectations and use it to be self-destructive and grow themselves into a person that is just, kind of like a train wreck.
Because that's what they feel that society is expecting them to act as, right? So when we see like these like super toxic,
not always though. I mean, sure, probably most of the time, but there are people who just do that. And like, I meant more to draw the comparison that it can be liberating to buck that of your own free will as a choice. There are people who are femme, but they don't identify as femme. They identify as like they, them. So are you going to parse whether or not that's valid because they look femme and present femme and identify with a lot of female or
but that's
femme-based things?
But I've already said that I don't think that is what the argument is here, right? Because obviously if someone asks me to, says that I'm non-binary, I prefer they, them pronouns. Obviously I'm going to respect that, right?
You said at first you wouldn't respect the it, right?
I'm like mega torn on that.
Why?
I don't.
What is the difference between it and them and they?
Okay. One thing at a time. We can get to that. I promise. I'm not trying to dodge that question. It's
I'm smoking.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Yeah, we're just vibing. So when we talk about, 1 second. What were we talking about right before you said the it thing?
Choice.
Choosing. I don't think that it is acceptable for people to. Okay. If there is someone that identifies as non-binary, and they present nothing that, and this is a genuine question. What is the functional difference between someone that presents femme, wears makeup, dresses like ultra femme, acts ultra femme, has all of those gendered roles that we would assign to womanhood, right? But then identifies as non-binary. What is the functional difference?
It's how they choose to, I won't use the word choose, but it's how they have decided how to represent themselves, which is why it should be respected a priori. That's where these arguments lead, because it ends up being people telling other people whether or not they're justified in being what they are. There's no way to know it, even if you think it's never a choice and everybody just is born some certain way and whatever. There's no way you can know that. And there are certain ways you can see gender dysphoria or intersex people and stuff and draw conclusions and, those people get medical treatment and all that. But the idea that's the same as non-binary people and the way that they identify and, the way that a lot of people are really disgusted, I guess you could say, with the man-woman dichotomy that we've created over the last 150 years. Because even before then, it was different. We used to call all children girls, and they all wore dresses. Yep. There's no continuous track of this. It's very fluid. So I think what it comes down to functionally is that you could never prove anyone is anything. And that kind of should show people that they need to, whether or not they agree with something, regardless of what they believe, they need to respect other people. Because I have seen the fallout of all this bullshit going around over the last 9 months or whatever. And all I've seen is a whole lot of really toxic abuse. I've seen a lot of transphobia. I've seen a lot of trans exclusion. I've seen a lot of arguments that I saw go around in 2016 that just boggle my mind.
Sure, I don't disagree. There's a lot of fucking toxicity around this conversation, right? And I don't think that this toxicity needs to come around on this conversation.
Well, I don't think it does either, but,
right, but
then you
like,
call people transphobic.
Okay, yeah,
like,
but
what
like
are you
people
doing?
are calling me transphobic for the things that I'm saying.
Because you are literally making an argument that excludes trans people. That's
but again,
by definition.
I've already like tried to explain to you like what my like definition of
I
what it means to
understand
be
what
trans.
you're.
But like
I
I don't
understand
what group would be not included by that, right? So like
by
that's
the
the
ones
first thing.
you think. I mean, you've said it every time that you think there is some sort of not essential, but there is some sort of provable way to measure people's transness.
No,
and
I never said that.
And at least some. Well, but that's what you're saying about non-binary people.
So really quick, let me be like ultra clear. I don't think there's ever a way to prove that they're like that someone is one gender or the other, because I don't believe that gender is a quantifiable thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is a qualifiable thing.
It's not a biological thing.
No, it's not. It is something that we can qualify, and we can point out that something is either more masculine, more feminine, or something outside of that binary, right?
But even masculine and feminine is just completely like I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right to assume that just because men grew with bigger muscles that our entire conception of masculine is the same as feminine. I'm sorry, our entire conception of masculine and feminine is the same as that very small example of it. Like masculine and feminine is a much larger thing than that.
Well, sure, but like we've expanded this, right? Like in the 80s, everyone thought that the guys that were wearing spandex and the big hair were like very feminine, and they were pretending to be women. But like now we look at the guys and we cringe a little bit because of the way that they dress, but like
exactly.
we can tell
that's
that they're
the way.
men.
That is the way I look at you guys, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I hope that you guys grow out of it. I think you guys took a lot of really bad arguments from RGR, and you don't understand the implications
my
of
argument
them.
doesn't mostly come from RGR, right? My arguments have all come from, all right.
But like, have you read the the literature
Yes.
on?
Yes, I've gone way out of my way, both for personal reasons and for stream reasons, to be able to understand like the arguments for different like theories of gender and different conceptions of what it means to be trans. Like I've gone well out of my way. I understand
and you never came across anything that said there are people that basically do it as an aesthetic flourish or as a
I've heard of performativity, right? Or like performance theory, right? But that's not that's not like a choice. Like it is a choice to perform as these things, but it's not a choice to feel like you want to perform these things.
Okay,
perform them,
so I think we're both using the word choice differently. When I say it's a choice, I don't mean there's no human agency in it or no reason for it. It's not random or arbitrary, as you would say, which I would not say. But
wait, I don't think that there is any agency whether you choose to identify. I don't think you have any agency in what you or how you feel internally. Right? It can change over time, but I don't think that you can like change this thing at will, right? Like I couldn't just choose to be trans, right?
See, but that's the thing, because there is a subset of people within this vast sea of trans theory and non-binary theory that do choose literally, as in they do it as more of a mood expression. And you can say that's not a choice because it's based on their mood, but at some point you have to realize that there's no way that you could ever boil it down to say whether it's a choice or not.
Can you explain that to me? When you say they do it as a mood thing, they just feel more masculine or more feminine? Is that what you're saying?
There's some of that. There's people who identify as different, different animals, different days. There's people that they don't identify as the animals. It's a way to express. It's a way to express your social presentation. And with that, sometimes comes different pronouns. So if someone came to you one day and said they're they, them, and then came to you the next day and said they're he, him, how would you know that that that's real or not. You have no way to tell. You can dig back into their history, but that doesn't prove what they're telling you right now. So when I get this feeling that you think that when people say it can be a choice, they're saying what all of the Republicans said, 3 or 4 years ago, or probably still today, probably for the next 20 fucking years. But what you're doing is you're attacking, not attacking, you're arguing against the structure of transness, or whatever you want to call it, from the right. You're not arguing at it from the left. You're arguing at it from how can we justify these people to bigots, when what you should be saying is how do we help liberate these people? And with that comes the way to argue for it. Because if you focus on how are we going to protect these people in a justifiable way, it might exclude some, but we can't let all the rednecks get them. You're saying what you were saying, the line that held back trans people for like 30 years.
Okay, let me be like ultra clear. Okay. Mm-hmm. When you say that I'm arguing from the right, that's what it feels like y'all are doing. Because I'm not saying that it is a choice. That is what conservatives say.
See, that's a different reading on the term choice, I guess, because I'm not using choice to say that you just wake up one day and say this, although there are people that do that and they are valid. But there is some sort of motivation behind it, But the way they say choice is that you're just doing it for a lark and you're doing it to trigger people, or, you're some weird degenerate or whatever, blah, 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 blah.
It's usually the degenerate one.
Well, sure. But that is not the same as saying that human agency in terms of identity should be taken a priori. Those are two totally separate worlds. Just because the word choice is in it does not mean that they're related at all.
So is gender defined by how you outwardly express or no? Because that's what you're saying to me now. But a minute ago,
well, no, I meant outwardly express in terms of your personality and expression. I didn't mean like physically or anything. I just meant in terms of your self-identification, in the terms that you want to present yourself in a personality, in an ethereal sense. It doesn't have to be tied to anything really, like in the physical world. If it, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
But then we're just talking about doing stuff, and at this point we're talking about gender like it's not a social construction. Like there isn't already something in the world that we can point to that is what a gender is, because we're talking about gender right now. If gender didn't exist, we wouldn't be talking about it right now, right? This is the part.
Well, if gender didn't exist, we would just have people. It'd probably be pretty great, actually. It would just be people doing what they want to do.
I'm completely agnostic on gender abolition. I just like I
sure.
honestly,
and there are plenty of trans people that also are even against gender abolition, and I understand why they would be.
But like, so I'm trying to understand, because it would be nice to be like, if I'm wrong, I want to know that I'm wrong, right? But like the problem that I'm running into is that it's not for like a want to like blow you the fuck out or argue with you like for no reason, right? But
you're trying to logic it down, and you can't. This is a topic that you can't do that with.
Why?
Because it just doesn't work.
Because if you say contradictory things, right, then like people aren't going to
contradictory understand. Like what?
Like the all the stuff that I just like point out. Like I still don't understand how like the ethereal thing plays into like I still don't understand what you're saying about like the it's not
the way you present yourself.
Yes, because like of course like the way you present yourself outwardly is going to be an aspect of your gender, right?
Sure, in the context of this conversation, sure.
Okay, and so if that's part of your gender,
I mean, it doesn't have to be, but I understand what you're saying.
I mean, that's one of the aspects
it is a
of
lot
gender.
of the time.
I don't think that you can like divorce like your outward appearance from like gender, because that's one of the aspects of gender.
Sure, but then we get into, you know, what about a trans person who
Hasn't been able to transition?
Exactly.
Right, but like you can still outwardly express femininity or masculinity without undergoing some kind of hormone treatment or surgery, right?
Sure. But is that what makes a person trans, really, though? Like, not really.
I think that what makes someone trans is some sort of incongruity with the gender assigned to them at birth and the gender that they want to present as, right? And the incongruity can be either a little bit discomforting, right? Like I would say that at this point I'm pretty open about it. I used to say that I don't talk about it very much, but at this point, because of this, I do talk about it. I would probably say that I'm non-binary, but it doesn't really like cause me enough discomfort to present as a man and be referred to as a man, and people perceive me as a man for me to do anything about it, right? Like it's fine. There's like,
well, shouldn't you be allowed to do that if you wanted to?
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that someone can't do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to say is that when we are fuck me, I lost my train of thought. I was saying that we have an incongruity. Oh yeah, so like there is an incongruity even in my head about like how I present and like how I feel internally, but like it doesn't cause me enough to like discomfort to be like dysphoria or anything to that degree, right? So like there are people that are trans that have like that level, like 0.01, right? And then like 0.01 units of dysphoria, right? And then there are some people that have 100% dysphoria, and they're super upset with the.
Well, it's a medical condition. It's not really even so much being upset.
Well, yeah, but like it's being uncomfortable to the point of it being like it affecting you mentally, right? Which is why it's a condition, right?
Oh, so let's say you're just upset then, and you don't have dysphoria.
Then you can just like you can just present how you want to.
Right. And would anyone ever be able to prove it or not? I mean, I'm sure there'd be
right. But okay. So this is where we keep on getting hung up. I've never said what you're saying, right? I've never said that anyone has to prove that they're one gender or the other, right? I've never said that. All I've been trying to say is that there has to be like some way for us to define what it means to be trans, right? And I think
that is asking people to prove. When you say define trans,
Wait, hold on. No. Absolutely not. Just because we have a definition of something doesn't mean that you have to prove it to someone, right? We have a definition of being gay is being attracted to someone of the same gender / sex, right?
Sure.
All right. I don't have to prove to anybody that. Like that's something that I don't have to prove to anybody, right? Because like the only way that I could prove to someone that I was gay is, well, no, even if I did like in front of someone fuck another dude in the ass, like no one would like that. Someone could just say like he's
just doing it to whatever. Yeah, he's just faking.
Right, but we still have these definitions
and what
because
do
the
you
definitions
do?
are important
Shut the
in terms
fuck
of
up.
us in terms of us legislating protections.
See, but that's why I think it's so weird, because all of this stuff that I've talked about, I didn't make it up. It's already been defined by theory. Like this is not even a new topic that people are hashing out. Like,
which part?
The entire non-binary, that self-ID is just as valid as any sort of characteristic or innate, whatever.
All you can do is self-ID, and like all we can do is trust those things. I agree, right? But
so yeah.
Okay.
So why do you need to exclude them in order to protect anything? Why do you have to define? Like I feel like you think that nobody has defined any of this stuff yet, and you're trying to find like the ultimate steel man. But what you're doing the effects of what you're doing in some small way is very analogous to what happened after the Stonewall riots to trans people, because they say, like, you know, we understand that gay and lesbian people are great, blah, 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 we understand it, but these trans people, they're a little bit too much for us, and we don't think that we will be able to progress as a society.
Nothing in my definition says anything about that.
But you're talking about how do we enact legislation that protects these people and stuff if we make it this kind of airy-fairy thing that doesn't have some concrete definition, and I just don't think that that's the right way to go about it.
Okay, so can you explain to me how we write legislation to protect trans people if we don't have a definition that includes as many trans people as possible in it? Like, I don't know what group of trans people would be excluded by definition,
So
where there's
what
an
I would say
incongruity
is-
with... Wait, really quick, I'm just going to say it again. There's some sort of incongruity with your internal conception of, like, how you feel like you want to outwardly project, and, like, the societal expectations, or, like, the gendered characteristics that you have, right? There's some sort of incongruity there. What group of trans people are excluded by that?
Okay, so I guess if I'm offering my own legal prescriptions, I would enact things based on just the idea of gender presentation, period. Why do you have to get into... I mean, trans people are already almost a protected class. They kind of are, but it doesn't seem like we value that much right now in America, but I'm sure that that'll grow. And what I think would be the most important is to instill in people that the way that they identify is their own agency and their own right. You
but
don't
this is
have
a non-answer, right? I'm not trying to debate
that is the answer. The way I would enact legislation that would protect gender expression or non-gender expression as an identity. So if someone is bigoted towards you because...
So how does my definition not, like, fit one-to-one with yours?
Because you're saying that there are these characteristics that we associate, so that we need to kind of define it in terms of excluding xenogenders, neopronouns, and the more...
My definition, I'm going to say it one more time, is that there is some sort of incongruity with the assigned sex at birth or assigned gender at birth and the way that they feel internally. But
there are some people that don't feel that way. That's kind of what I'm saying. There are some people that don't feel that way.
Those people would be cisgendered then.
No.
How not? If there's no incongruity between your gender and your sex, and there's no incongruity with the way that you feel internally and the way that you're expected to present outwardly, how is that not cisgendered?
Because it leaves out the people who do things as more of a personal flourish. It leaves out the idea.
Well, how does a personal flourish? How does me, like, dressing emo change my gender?
Well, it actually kind of does in a very broad, very vague sense, because you're changing the type of masculine that you present as, I guess, in a sense. But
people would still recognize me as a man.
Sure, but a different subset of man. So I think that the larger point is that...
I'm going, like, no. I super disagree with that. That is super wrong. That's like saying, like, because someone is...
It's like
has,
femboys. What about femboys?
They're still boys.
But I don't
They just
think
present
that
more
they...
feminine.
Right.
Is a butch lesbian?
What I'm trying to say is that
really
even
quick, is a
within...
butch lesbian not a woman?
No, I agree with you. A woman is a woman. But what I'm trying to say is that there's a spectrum even between those, even between those more rigid poles. There is still a spectrum. So, like, there's a spectrum between all of this. That's what it means to say it's arbitrary, is that we put up these lines in very specific points in this spectrum that don't really have any justification to be there. We think it has justification to be there, but you can change it by your own whim if you choose to do so. So, like,
how does an individual change the social conception
by advocating for their own rights and gender expression, on individual rights and gender expression?
Okay, so someone identifies as someone identifies as dream gender, okay? How does the societal or how does the gendered expectations that their outward expression would say out to the world, right? How does that change?
Well, it's not a question of whether or not it would change. It's a question of not. It's a question because I don't really know much about dream gender specifically, but it's more about letting a person be referred to how they want, letting them be, like letting them be treated in the way that they feel that they should be treated. That's kind of what it all boils down to.
They want to be recognized in society as something, right? Because of what?
Because the way that what do you mean? Like because of the way that they want to be. They
because
don't
there's
agree.
Something internal that they feel.
But you don't know that. There's no literature that says that.
I do
that's
know that
always
because
the
they're
case
telling
all
me
the time.
well, hold on. I do know that because they're telling me that they want to be perceived in a certain way by telling me what their gender is.
So yeah, but you're assuming that there's some essential characteristic to it, and that's not always the case. That's what I mean when I say transmedicalist argument, because the idea of even saying that goes against more modern trans theory.
What is the definition of transmedicalism to you?
That there are innate characteristics that are tied to your gender from your sex, and
okay, I don't think that
basically what
right
it does is it excludes non-binary people by saying that you're either born a man and you want to be a woman, or you're born a woman and want to be a man.
Okay,
that's transmedicalism in a nutshell.
So this is okay. This is where we keep on running into, all right? And this is what I think is like the ultimate, like the way that it was presented initially was really cringy, okay? But I've come to like believe this more and more, all right? Mm-hmm. This is an RGR thing, sorry. That people, there are like two types of people in the online space right now. There are people that argue against like the actual statements someone says, and then there are people that argue against what people hear. No.
Oh, sorry.
Like what people there's like, so I could either argue against someone's statement, or I could argue against what I think their statement is trying to say, right? So I could be arguing against, like, so the second one might be like arguing against a dog whistle, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like you're arguing, and all the people that are arguing against me are arguing against what they think I'm trying to dog whistle, rather than the words that I'm saying. Because I keep on saying, because wait, hold really quick, because you just defined transmedicalism in a way that I agree. That's what transmedicalism is. But nothing that I've said has anything to do with like gender essentialism in terms of like having it be essential to like any like born like sexed characteristic at all, right? It's just like a feeling that you don't you're like being expected to both that it could be either like a sex dysphoria thing, or it could be a gender dysphoria thing. You want to present in a certain way, or you have like an incongruity with the way that your body is, right?
But not all trans people even have gender dysphoria.
Right. And I just said that.
So, but see, that's where I get so confused, because I think that, I mean, I don't understand the logic of trying to drill down into some steel man of what you think is the best way to advocate for trans people.
Okay, so the best way that I think to advocate for trans people, like there's like multiple ways. I don't think that any one thing is the best way, right? But you have to be able to let me see here. There has to be legislative protections. There has to be like social change, right? And those are like the two basic ways that you can go about it, right? I don't know what the best way is, right? Like that, I think that that's like a unanswerable question, right? Like we have to like do trial and error to see like what is the best way to like change society's minds towards trans people, right? Mm-hmm. But like past that, I don't know what like the best way to advocate for them is. But I certainly don't think that it's I don't think that it's saying that anyone could be anything ollie oxen free. Like gender like literally doesn't mean anything, when like it does mean something. It just doesn't mean what the common.
But see, now you're doing it again. You're reducing it to an absurd degree because
But
they
I
don't
almost
say
finished
that.
I almost finished my statement.
Okay, sorry. Continue.
Yeah. Like, so, I think that people absolutely do. Okay. When we talk to people and we try to explain to them what it means to be trans, right? Well, how would you explain it to them?
Like if I was just talking to some cis normie person?
Cis normie person, not someone that's like especially bigoted. Maybe they're just like dumb.
Okay, like just your average Republican kind of
Not
normie.
even a Republican. It could just be like a Democrat. Like, it's just like, let's say it's like a 50-year-old dude. It's just like, I don't really care what how someone wants to be, just like as long as like everyone's happy with each other.
A reasonable normie. Okay.
Yes.
I would say that. So I guess I would start out by saying that there are people who identify as the opposite gender that they were born. There are also people who identify as something else completely outside of that because they don't find familiarity in that dichotomy. So there are people that identify as they, or they them, or it's, and they're all the exact same way of expression. I mean, because they are. That's what bugs me so much about this is it comes implied that there's a difference between choosing your own gender identity and being like legit trans. And
Okay.
I guess I could understand why someone would hear being trans as a choice and think of the old kind of SJW bullshit, but there is an element of transness that allows itself the flexibility to where if someone does choose that, I understand that they choose it with it. I understand that they choose it with a sense of internal agency that is motivated on at least some mental processes or something, but that's just as valid as any other type.
Can you explain to me why a person who is not trans would choose to not identify as cis and would instead identify as trans?
Well, if they wanted to,
But what would drive them to do that?
Okay, so what if someone, so cis is more, so let's say, you grow up a dude, you're a dude, blah, 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 blah. And then you kind of realize how toxic masculinity is, and you don't really agree with the way that men are the structure of man has developed. But you still identify as what you consider to be a man in your own personal kind of world. So you start going by they, them instead. So like you're non-binary, but you're still masculine. You're still a conception. You're still, 99.999% what a conception of a man would be in society.
That's more bucking the gendered expectations more than just like gender. And also, if someone,
what are gender, there is no gender outside of gendered expectations. That's what gender is. That's where I feel like this starts to tie back to like biology.
It's a gender isn't any one thing. It is a collection of things that all come together to be gender. So there is outward perception of yourself. There is the inward perception of yourself. There is the societal expectations, right? Like there's a bunch of things that tie into gender. There's probably more if we just want to like spitball things, right? So like just bucking one of these things doesn't non-binary you make.
But it does make you a version of trans.
So if I do chores around the house, and instead of making
about chores,
that's a societal expectation, right? A societal expectation is like the woman has to do the housework, right? So if I start doing chores around the house with my girlfriend, or start taking over all the
but now you're acting like you can just decide to do it one day in like some kind of flippant, like, not motivated on anything, when you yourself said that it is always motivated on something. So what if someone is motivated by some internal pressure to do something that for all other intents and purposes seems totally just out of the blue and based on nothing? What if someone just psychologically determines that they want to be this gender? Like there's no way that you can prove that. So why would you
Hold on, let's stop talking about the proof thing, because I've never said that we have to prove.
But yeah, you're trying to define it. When you say that I can do chores, am I a woman for those 15 minutes? That kind of belies.
Well, that's not what I said.
Okay.
Okay.
Was that
please.
not what you were about to say?
No. I was it was your. Okay. So you said that bucking societal trends or like societal expectations of what it means to be one gender or the other. All right. That makes you a version of trans. If I was to be a stay-at-home dad, that is bucking a lot of societal expectations. Are stay-at-home dads a version of trans?
Well, what I said was that based on your own internal kind of your presentation and stuff, not based on the actions you do. That's
the
kind of a
internal
separate
thing. That's what I've been saying the entire time.
But it's not always internal. There's not always a quantifiable internal motivation.
No
there
quantifiable. There's always qualifiable, though.
No, there's not.
If it's not quantifiable nor qualifiable, then it doesn't exist.
It can't be proven, but for all you know, it does exist in someone's mind.
But we're slipping into solipsism where we can't prove anything.
But no. What I'm trying to get at is you have to take people at their word.
I've been saying that.
But have you over the last like 2 or 3 weeks? Because I've heard a lot.
Listen, if chat wants to like ones in chat, if you
I'm not going to listen to your chat.
No, I want to know if I'm contradicting myself. All right.
I would never listen to a DGG Orbiter's chat, with all due respect.
I don't even think I'm a DGG Orbiter. I'm not well off. I'm like good enough off with either DGG or
not.
DGG.
It's a bad road to go down.
I mean, I would be making a lot more money off the stream if I was an orbiter of either Vosh or Destiny.
You know what happens to all of them? Their career's over in like 6 months.
I mean, our relevance doing pretty good.
Yeah. We'll see.
Okay.
I don't know. I saw the inception of all this, and I see a lot of people in this sphere talking about this issue now because of RGR's thing and because of Vosh's thing, and the way that you guys both cited him as being like, well, Vosh agrees with this, so it must be true. When he said pretty much the opposite of what you guys say.
Okay, I don't know what he's said that's the opposite of what I've said. The opposite of what I've been saying would be transmet. Okay, I desperately want to fucking talk to Vosh then, because the videos that I've seen him talk on, I agree with him on the xenogender stuff, right? But okay, really quick, my chat is losing its mind and they want a trans person to come on. Is that cool?
You know what? I think that's a great idea. Okay. I think the more trans people we all talk to, the better. And maybe they'll say I'm full of shit, but you know what? Whatever. Trans people can be wrong also sometimes.
Let me see here.
Anyway, I guess thanks for wasting time with me, and have a good one.
Well, hold on. I was...
Oh, like all three of us?
Yeah, they want to talk to you. I'm just going to...
Are you putting someone on to like yell at me or something?
I don't fucking know.
I'll see.
I'm just going to mute, okay? No mercy just from chat. They have to accept my friend request.
Who is it?
It's just someone from my community, and they're trans, and they
vehemently disagree with me.
I'm
going to assume so, because why else would you put them on?
Is Lady Rain joining the call? No, not Lady Rain. Okay, Jess, if you haven't accepted my friend... Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. Now I can do it.
Jess TGT?
No mercy Jess in my chat.
Oh, I don't know who that is.
Okay, 1 second. Let me figure out how to fucking make this a group chat. Add friends to DM. Oh wait, you have to add me as a friend too. 1 sec.
I do. Oh.
Add friend. And then you just accept that friend request, and then I can invite her on. Okay. I don't like it when people get like dogpiled or anything. I'm just gonna mute. Okay, I'm only doing this because the entirety of chat is asking me to, and
No, I'm looking at chat now. They're saying that, let's see, using this guy's logic, wouldn't that mean that Doe and DM are wrong? No, it wouldn't, because their arguments boil down to the same thing as mine, which is self-identity should be respected a priori.
Okay, I'm muting because Jess is in the call. I don't like dogpiles, so I'm just gonna.
No, sure.
Yeah,
You are okay.
Okay. Hey,
Hi.
hey, I wanted to talk to you. I've been molding in chat because of all this discourse.
So,
Everything's
okay, so let me ask you first: are you part of his chat like regularly?
Yeah, I'm regularly in his chat.
Okay.
Regularly in various other chats.
Destiny.
Prime K's.
Okay.
I don't chat in Destinies. I type occasionally there, but I don't like. Not a chatter there.
Okay. I just didn't know if I was being assassinated or not.
Yeah, but like, why would that matter? I've come in to just talk, and like, you're immediately just straight up on the fucking.
No,
are you from Destiny's like point? Like, are you
Because-
just immediately gonna dismiss my fucking opinion?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I know how.
No, but then, like, why would it matter? Would it?
Because I know how the optics of these things work. I guess.
The optics. I mean, I'm
not
literally
even
Just,
ta-
I'm coming on here to talk about this discourse because it specifically pisses me off, and
Okay.
you know.
Well, then what? Just go on then.
Well, specifically, it's just like ever since this entire discourse has started, it's felt like a fucking fuck ton of, and I'm not saying that you can't be like cis to not talk about it, but it's just felt like a bunch of fucking cis people arguing about a bunch of shit that fucking. Then why are you doing it if you agree? Because you're continuing this discourse, and honestly, I kind of feel like you're spreading like even more like harmful shit. It sounded like you were kind of just like saying, oh, it's like a choice, like people choose to be gender fluid and that they choose to feel the way that they want to feel on those days, when I don't really think that you choose to be gender fluid.
That's not what I said, though.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm getting the feelings of. So that's why
do you
I'm
understand? Do you understand that there is a subset of people that are like that within the trans community? I would never say that. The idea that you can say being trans is just a choice is such a massive reduction of what I said that it's not applicable.
Okay, then what are you saying? Because like I don't really like see that the other, like, I guess I'm just like, maybe I'm not seeing what you're saying, you know?
I have a problem with how exclusionary this vein of these takes have gotten.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is a very insidious thing that leads to excluding a lot of people. And I think it is worth at least arguing about, I guess, even though I don't really have a dog in this fight in a sense. But I have talked to a lot of people that have shared the same concerns as me. And I think it hit a tipping point when I heard him calling that other guy transphobic, and that's not right. It's just not even accurate. That's not. He was literally just repeating like the fucking definition for things, and I think that Hans and Sondsol didn't understand it, which is fine.
I would think that he didn't understand it either then, because like from what I heard, he was kind of like saying those arguments that would enable transphobia. Now I was watching it live playing Halo Infinite Ranked, so I wasn't paying attention to all of it. I'm not like, I don't have a dog in this race when it comes to like what people specifically said. I just kind of like am really frustrated with
the way all of this is people are talking about.
The way that it's being talked about. Yeah, because I feel like it is people. I would think more on the side of like gender abolition that kind of like spread around these arguments and drama and stuff. I mean, like my problem around all of this is like that Demon Mama Doe debate, which then led to all of this drama. Like all of it's been around Xenogender, Demon Mama RGR, yeah. But, well, that debate popped it up recently with all the drama, and everybody's sitting around acting like it's. Well, it exactly was.
It was
like
a
everybody was sitting
harassment campaign.
It
was
RGR.
Abuse. It was online abuse.
To some extent, yeah. Like, you know, saying that, like, because here's my problem. Like, oh fuck, I don't want to go on this too much long, but
You're
like
good.
it was wrong of RGR to be like sitting there and saying like this enables pedophilia, because I think that you should know the implications of like saying enable pedophilia art.
Exactly.
But at the same time, right? I do not think that it is okay in response to that to then be okay with like trying to get her removed from like a board position, or like her opportunities for doing that, or like fucking encouraging your community to contact the bar association of their state for their like life goals. Like I think all of this stuff has ballooned out of control, and it's nowhere near a level of like equivalent fucking issues. And this is what this debate feels like. Then you go back to the xenogenders, and it's literally just an extension of that. And now we're arguing. And it feels like you're just putting fucking trans people on a fucking, like on this fucking field where like, oh shit, there's this drama between, there's these drama between these streamers. Let's now have this entire fucking discourse that's going to make people like fucking contentious and split up now and fucking harm the trans community underneath. I feel like people on both sides of the argument, no matter how I feel about it, are being fucking hurt because of this.
I agree. I agree with almost everything you just said.
Okay, then, yeah.
That's why I decided to come on here in the first place.
Well, you coming on here and talking about it is just perpetuating all of this bullshit. You didn't come on here and explain all of that shit. You came on here and gave your dumbass fucking definitions for what you believe in. Like that.
But my definitions are actually backed up by all the people that study it.
Oh, I mean, like, unless you're gonna like give me shit, which you can obviously send shit in here, I could just say the same thing. I could go around and be like, oh,
no, I know.
All of my arguments are fucking actually backed up by evidence.
I understand how that comes off as being unsubstantiated, but
yeah, no.
Can I also ask a question, like super quick? I don't like dog piles, sorry, but like when I'm gonna say this and then mute again. When you say everything that you're saying is backed up by evidence, but then like we also say that it's like unprovable to like nothing in gender is provable, right? Like
I didn't say nothing in gender is provable.
Okay, I must have misunderstood then.
I said that there are people that do literally make an agency-based decision or a choice or whatever you want to call it. I'm trying not to use that word because I guess you associate it with reactionary arguments, but this is not a reactionary argument. There are people like that in the world. So, you know, there are tons of people who have gender dysphoria. There are tons of people who have sex dysphoria. There are tons of people who have some sort of, you know, psychological characteristic or personality characteristic that doesn't force them to present a certain way, but that's how they feel fulfilled. But there are also people who don't approach it that way. And when you start talking about defining what is transness, it lends to the exclusion of people outside that definition. And well,
it seemed your definition to fix that then just excludes people like me when you're saying gender is an arbitrary like construct.
That's not what arbitrary means.
Well, that is how it's being used.
That's how other people. I did not use arbitrary that way.
You might as well be, because that's what you've been arguing the entire fucking time.
No, I said.
You better take that call on that.
No, absolutely not.
No, you don't want to take it? Okay.
When I see, that's why this frustrates me so much, is because when did I ever say that all trans people aren't valid? I just said that also
I'm
this
not
other
saying
type.
You said that. I'm just saying, like, when you say that like gender is arbitrary, that excludes people like me from like being trans, because like I identify as a woman. What I identify isn't arbitrary. It just feels like when you're saying that shit, you're just saying that like all of the dysphoria I feel around like my gender identity and how I want to be presented is just like fucking arbitrary.
See, but that's not what the word arbitrary means.
Well, that's how it's being used.
When I say arbitrary, the way that the meaning of the word arbitrary just means that it came about in a way that can't necessarily be justified. It doesn't mean it's random. It doesn't mean that you.
Well, I don't really think it would mean that. I mean, because like
that is what the word means, and I see half of these motherfuckers saying it the wrong way.
Well,
that's what arbitrary means.
I don't really think that, because like.
Well, I'm sorry.
I feel like I could look up the definition of arbitrary right now
Please
just
do.
to be more accurate, but
It
I
doesn't
feel
mean
like
random.
I tried to do that earlier, and he wouldn't
not
let
saying
me.
it means
It
random.
could mean assigned at random, but it doesn't mean random.
Adjective, based on random choice or personal whim rather than any reason or system of a
Exactly.
power or ruling unrestrained and autocratic in the use of authority. Oh no, these are similar, but
So what it means is that it may have it started that way. The power that it has now in our society.
well then
is
I
totally
don't feel like
separate.
fucking then that doesn't like apply to what like gender is. Then if like now, oh no, you've proven that arbitrary has like based on random choice of personal whim. Guess what? Like that means that what we're talking about isn't fucking arbitrary. Huh?
The decisions that you make are not arbitrary in how you want to present yourself, but gender as a structure is. Those are very separate things. If we had some different setup, and I would imagine you would still end up wanting to present the same way. So it's not really so much that you want to identify as a woman. It's that you identify with this thing, this point in the spectrum that happens to be under the rubric of woman.
So do you think?
Am I right to assume? I'm sorry, I didn't ask your pronouns, but I'm assuming.
She, her. It's okay. Thank you. Can you
So
just repeat what you said? Just because like the pronoun thing threw me off.
Sorry. The idea that it's arbitrary only means that it was formed arbitrarily, which means this structure was created based on things that happened to have power at the time.
You don't think that the structure could have been created off of things that just kind of turned out to be natural extensions of how we interacted with each other? Because I feel like that is a more reasonable explanation, especially when you look at like how human families would interact or any kind of fucking actual history. Like it would seem that all of these norms that we have today, even though that there are like different cultures and different stuff all around,
but even our own has changed.
So that it changes over time, but like these other aspects have seemed to remain rather fucking consistent.
Like
in between.
What?
Like the actual two fucking binary gender norms. Now, I'm not saying gender is binary, but like that seems to remain a consistent feature long enough that it may have been reinforced by how we interacted with each other. Just because there are examples outside of the rule, that doesn't mean that there isn't some consistency, okay?
Sure.
And I'm not saying that this is like how we should look at stuff. What I'm saying is it seems more that like a lot of how we used to view stuff was based on not like this arbitrary thing that we just made up to fucking control women or whatever, but
that's
it
not
kind
what
of came out with it. Like,
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to frustrate you. It triggers me.
Well, I mean, I went out and defined it for you. What else? Because that's how like you're using arbitrary. And
so race is arbitrary.
How so?
Race is completely arbitrary.
In what ways? Are you going to really like?
In the way that we assign it to people, it has no real justification other than we saw brown people from this country and we designated them as this, but this other brown people from this other country, we designated them as this, and then this white people from this country. It almost has nothing to do with genetics, because the way that genetics is dispersed in the world.
So the way that we talk about it is somewhat arbitrary in the way that we defined it, especially historically given that the fact that we used it to justify like historically like justify owning other people. So I do agree with that, but like if you like, it's not arbitrary or completely meaningless. Like do you know what ethnicities are? Like when you're like,
but ethnicity is not the same as race.
It's not the same as race, but like it seemed like they kind of just used a bunch of ethnicities and lumped in the skin colors that like the people had in the same fucking thing.
That's what makes it arbitrary.
Yeah, but like
not random.
Race,
random.
But race isn't gender, and to some extent it was random because like it was just all of these people who have a similar skin color and are of similar ethnicity are this thing now. You know,
but that's
like
not
they
really
didn't
random.
get to.
There are reasons that it happened.
There's reasons surrounding it,
right?
But This is so confusing because like I just feel like we're talking about gender. Like this has nothing to do with it.
Well, they're both social constructs. That's what I was trying to get at.
Time is technically a social construct.
Well, you can measure time, though. The way we measure,
you can make measurements with like our measurement system of how we did. Like all of our shit is social constructs. Everything we do in today is a social construct. So like, there's no point bringing it up because like because we could just then argue the validity of other fucking social constructs. Do we want to sit here and argue if fucking time is valid? Like, should we care about it?
I'm not trying to argue that social constructs are valid or not. I'm trying to just point out that the way humans
there's no point in pointing it out if you're not going to tell me how this is some exception.
And what do you mean by an exception?
Well, that I mean, like, you're going to have to act if you want to make this argument, right? That this is a social construct, therefore, like, we made it up and it doesn't matter. Then you're going to have to give me a reason why that is the case.
It doesn't matter part.
Because it seems like that's what
I never said that. I've never said it doesn't matter. I said it was formed in kind of this arbitrary. I'm going to say it again. I'm sure chat's spamming somewhere, but in this arbitrary way. That doesn't mean it's random. That doesn't mean it's meaningless. What it means is that the decisions that the decisions we made over time created this structure of expectations that isn't really founded in science. It isn't really founded in history. It isn't really founded.
I mean, it seems to be founded in fucking history when it's like how we've been doing, like how we've interacted and how we've constructed these norms throughout fucking time.
How we have, sure, but we're Western people.
How most people have. Like, it seems like all of these things that you're talking about are just like how we develop these things. People have different ideas throughout different times, and then all of a sudden, like, people start doing different fucking things, and that happens along with technological developments and societal developments. Like, it just seems to be that, like, we humans tend to just change over time. So,
but even today, there's a vast disparity of different societies' expectations of gender, and even the amount of genders they recognize. So I don't even know that I'd agree to that.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that you would have to. We're living in a whole different time. I would say a much better time than if you were to go back fucking 100 years ago. Wouldn't you agree? I think the way that we thought today
and white, so I don't know if I would feel any different, but I'm sure most other people were. I
mean, with your fucking, I'm talking about with how you feel today. Wouldn't you agree it'd be better to be here now with how we think about stuff rather than 100 years ago? And
I'm talking about today. There are societies today in the world that have three genders in their languages.
It seems like we're accepting it, like, at least on a legality level, right? With the starting to make changes with the passports.
I didn't even know that. I hope so. I'm.
So yeah, there's already like There's already fucking changes.
So let me just give this perspective, and then I think I'm going to hop off. So I agree with you that it is very cringe and counterproductive for a bunch of white cishet debate bros to argue about another protected class as if they're a political football. That's not why I came on here, and that's not why I get so triggered. It's because I am in a lot of trans communities, and I know I have trans people that are very close to me. My best friend in my entire life is a trans person. I think this entire discourse, ever since the RGR shit, has been so destructive and insidious because she was making arguments that are factually untrue.
God. So see, you're just like, you have your fucking horse in this race too, because now you're just like, oh, because she was making, like, why does it have to go ultimately back to like fucking blaming someone? Like, you can sit there and
will you let me explain it to you, please?
No, because it just seems like you're just here to have your fucking RGR bash fest right now. Can we talk about like the actual fucking thing that I said, which it seems like this discourse is harming people on fucking every which direction?
I agree with that.
Yeah, and now you're just like, well, hey, and now fucking RGR is like fucking.
Okay, so look, all I'll say is this: there was a beginning of this drama that anyone who is on the internet would attest to. Whether or not you agree with one side or the other, it has led to a lot of really damaging discourse, and I am of the opinion that it is not okay to act toxic to other communities, which is why
So maybe you should tell like the community surrounding Doe and Demon Mama and RGR to not fucking go after actual people's careers.
That
like
right
I would think,
after
what's wrong with that? Well, yeah, I mean, like contacting the bar. Like, if I imagine if RGR is trying to be a lawyer, that's her fucking career.
How many people contacted the bar?
It doesn't matter. You know, encouraging and liking tweets, encouraging it instead of like calling it out is probably going to be an actual fucking problem.
Were any of them from Doe's or Demon Mama's community?
Yeah, actually. Demon Mama herself liked a tweet from somebody saying, "Thank you for."
Means that the people.
It means that she is encouraging the behavior, and to some extent, that is wrong. Okay. Like I don't see how you're now fucking like going on this thing like, well, did it? It seems like ultimately, like if I were to press you on this, you would just ask, well, at the end of the day, was there any actual harm like done? Do we know that? No, I guess not. Nothing happened then.
I was about to actually go much harder than that. What I was going to say is, don't you think that a person who uses their status as a law student publicly and their real name publicly,
well, she makes it clear that she isn't giving legal advice. It's not like any fucking situation where she's using, like, let's say a medical fucking like her medical degree to give like to fucking to. It's not irrelevant. Like you're making the same argument, but it's not the same fucking thing.
Let me explain. Let me explain.
It seems well. I mean, you can try. I'll let you try. But every time you explain something, you say something dumb. It's okay.
Because you're not letting me finish, and you're jumping on stuff before I explain.
Yeah, I'm jumping on shit because it's dumb. Don't worry.
You don't listen to the whole statement.
When I
say. When you become a lawyer,
consistent, you can't make a really like decent whole statement.
When you become a lawyer, you are expected to uphold a certain level of public decorum. It's part of the requirements of being a lawyer.
And yeah, I mean, I've seen all this shit on Twitter too. Again, it's just justifying the whole fucking.
No, I'm not even referencing that.
Well, now there's like a public decorum to a lawyer. Like, oh my god,
it's a real thing. That's a real requirement. It's a requirement for your job as a lawyer.
And she does a hell of a lot more to make a distinction that she's not giving actual medical advice.
That's not what the requirement is. The requirement isn't you have to give right legal advice. The requirement is you have to actually not engage in like hate speech or.
No, was she engaging in hate speech?
Well,
was she engaging in hate speech? Was she engaging in hate speech? Yes or no? This is a simple fucking question. Do not give me this little fucking.
Okay,
like,
well then yes,
she was doing this. Okay, how?
You want me to explain? Because
explain to me what about whatever she said is fucking hate speech.
She spent about 8 months, 5 months, something, a lot of months, accusing someone of being a pedophile.
Oh my god! You want to show me where she accused Doe of being a pedophile? You want to fucking do this shit? We've had this goddamn discourse already. Sorry, Sond.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't you agree with me earlier?
I said it was wrong because of the implication. That doesn't mean that's what she fucking said or what she was doing. There's a difference between an implication that's fucking made.
I love the enthusiasm. I stayed out of it. I had thoughts, but I didn't want it to be like super aggro. I have to go. I'm getting my booster shot.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I really don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to.
Look, if you want to talk about this, No Mercy Jess, and you want me to take your side into account, I'm more than happy to listen. I feel like I said all I need to say. I don't really think people here are going to listen to me much, but I wanted to at least state my case. So yeah.
Okay. Hey, listen, I appreciate you coming on. I don't want to like cut it off in the middle of you guys going at it because I don't.
No, I knew what I came here for. Yeah. I feel like I accomplished it.
Yeah. Hopefully, I wasn't too aggro.
You're pretty aggro, but I guess I was a little too.
I didn't feel like I was aggro. I guess our scales for these things are way off. But all right, love you guys both. Love everyone in chat. We're rating into Shark. I'll catch you guys later. All right.
Love Shark. Love you, son. Hell yeah. Thanks for the content.
No problem. Bye.